Sorry about that. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Throwback Thursdays with IFA. As some of you know, India Foundation for the Arts is a grant-making organization. We support projects in the arts and culture across the country in diverse languages, disciplines, genres. And the outcomes of these grants are out there in the public domain as books, publications, performances, productions, exhibitions, websites, archival material, seminars, and workshops. But other than making grants, what we also try and do is hold public gatherings where our grantees and fellows can share their projects, either when it is a work in process or at the end of their project, and share that with a larger public. Post the pandemic, it became impossible for us to do these live events around the country. So we chose the option of going digital, and we began Throwback Thursdays, where every alternate Thursday, we come back at this time and share one such project with you. And we have covered our diverse programs within the organization, grantees and fellows who have come from different parts of the country and worked on a very diverse set of issues, concerns, ideas. So you will get to see a new project today. But before I hand over to Suman Gopinath, my colleague, who will be telling you a little more about this evening's program, let me just take you through the house rules. So as you know, there is a little chat box, and we really encourage you to put your questions, put your comments and suggestions, and if you want to discuss something there. But at the end of the presentation today, we will take your questions as well. And it'll be great if you put those questions in the Q&A box that you see at the bottom. So comment, suggestions in the chat, and appreciation, all of that in the chat, and your questions in the Q&A box, please. If you want your friends to also watch it and they for some reason have not registered to Zoom, please know that we are going live on the IFA Facebook page. So you can send them the link to that page and invite them over to catch this evening with us. And with that, Suman, I hand it over to you. Suman Gopinath, Program Officer for Archival and Museum Fellowships, as it was called before, and program for now.
Thank you very much, Arundhati. And thank you all who are here on Zoom and Facebook watching this program this evening. Now, before we begin Ramya's presentation, I'd like to give you a little introduction about our Archival and Museum Fellowship Program, as it was then called. This program at IFA began about 7 years ago, and the intention, of course, behind the program was to make museums and archival spaces come alive through really creative kind of curatorial interventions. So this way, the collections, could reach a much larger public. It could become accessible to a lot more people, and it also gave the chance for people to see this collection through a completely new lens. So it is, in a sense, giving new meaning to older collections and making it accessible through creative curatorial interventions. We have worked with, over these past few years, we have worked with about 7 archives, 7 museums across the country, and we have also made about 35 fellowships. In fact, the last Archival and Museum Fellowship program that we presented on Throwback Thursdays looked at museums, and we looked at the Goa Chitram Museum. But today we're going to look at an archive, which is the archive at the Raman Research Institute based in Bangalore. The institute, as I'm sure a number of you know, was set up by Sir C.V., the Nobel laureate Sir C.V. Raman in 1948. And it was meant for the research in basic sciences, and also for the advancement, as he said, for human advancement, which I thought is such a wonderful kind of aim. So he, in fact, began this, he was the first director of the institute, and he also remained the director till his death in 1970. And after that, I think the institute went through several changes, but it still remains one of the premier institutions for science in the country. In fact, the first time I was invited to visit the institute, I was the bustling city of Bangalore. It's really wooded and it has this beautiful modernist library which is set in this lovely space. And I think it was, and I first saw it when Dr. B.M. Meera, who in fact initiated the librarian at RRI, invited me to come and visit the institute. Ramya, I think, will tell you a lot more about this building, about the institute itself. Ramya is an architect and an urban designer, and she's brought both these strengths to her project at the RRI. So this evening, Ramya is going to tell you about her journey, at the Raman Research Institute, and her remit, in fact, was to both design the physical space of the gallery and to visualize the archival space as well. So it was all a really packed kind of schedule because she had to complete everything in 7 months because there was lots of different kinds of archival material, which were photographs and handwritten letters and in Sir C.V. Raman as well. So, in fact, Ramya moved from Ahmedabad, where she teaches at CEP, a really well-known architecture school, and came to Bangalore for 7 months to complete this project. But I must say that this project is still a work in progress. It was supposed to have been completed in May this year, but because of the pandemic, I mean, sadly, like so many other things, they couldn't formally open the space. So we are hoping that they will open it later in the year. And with that, I think I'd like to invite Ramya to tell us about her journey at the Institute. But before that, a very quick word of thanks to Dr. B.M. Meera, the librarian at Raman Research Institute, who initiated this whole project, and the team who was, very supportive of Ramya throughout her working at the RRI, and of course, all the other scientists who supported her during her time there. And most importantly, Tata Trusts, without whom all these projects would have been impossible. So over to you, Ramya.
Thank you, Suman, for that great introduction. So I began working at RRI in December 2018, and even after the fellowship, I continued working there to finish the project. I'm still remotely associated with RRI. So it's been quite a long journey and a great one, something full of learnings. I had never, like the last time I studied these physics concepts was in 12th standard. Then after that, this is the first time I've been so closely associated with a science institute. So it was very new for me and it was really interesting. So the process of building the gallery was also challenging for me because I'm no science historian. In fact, I'm no historian, and I'm a designer. And so initially it felt like it was a very big challenge, but it also played to my advantage because I was simply that sample audience that the scientists were looking for. So that was great. The process of designing the permanent exhibit, the permanent archival gallery, involved both design and research. So I had to constantly switch roles between being a designer and being a researcher, and both design and research informed each other. And these are the kind of methods that I'm also interested in, both academically and professionally. So I think this was a great experience for me. I must say before I start that the making of the RRI Archival Gallery was a collaborative effort of 50, 60 people, not one, not two, and including the former and current library staff, scientific staff, administration, and everybody else at RRI who supported me throughout this journey. So I'd like to begin with that. I'm going to be sharing a small presentation. So let me just do that. Yes. Suman, I just wanted to know if it's visible.
Yes, it is, Ramya.
All right. All right. Okay. So before I start talking about our work at RRI, I want to give a small introduction to the institution itself. And because without understanding the institution, it was really impossible for me to go ahead. Um, so this is where RRI is. It is located in North Central Bangalore. Like Suman said, it is located next to a really busy junction, but it's very inconspicuous. You know, I've gone through this junction so many times and I've always missed it. It has a very plain compound wall, tiny board. So the first time I came here was for the IFA interview, and it was almost like I discovered some sort of a hidden treasure in the city. So it is very well known in the scientific world. But to somebody like me who is not so much associated to science, it was like a great discovery. So as Suman said, Sir C.V. Raman founded RRI in 1948 after he retired from the Indian Institute of Science. In fact, the RRI campus is very close to the Indian Institute of Science. After his demise in 1970, the institute was restructured to become an aided autonomous research institute. It is currently engaged in 4 main research areas: astronomy and astrophysics, soft condensed matter physics, theoretical physics, and light and matter physics. This right here is the main building of the RRI campus. It was the first building that was built, personally supervised, designed, and built by Sir C.V. Raman. It is spread over a lush green 20-acre campus. So it's a beautiful campus. This is the main building, and this is what it looked like in 1949 when the construction was completed. And this is Sir C.V. Raman standing right here at the balcony. So when I was seeing all the archival material, it seemed it was very contemplative, and it was beautiful because I was literally there in the same place. This is the path leading to the archival gallery. It is also my memory, the most beautiful memory of the campus. This is the RRI library building. It was built in 1976 by famous architect P.K. Venkatramanan, and of the Venkatramanan Associates, very famous architecture firm in Bangalore right now. And it is one of the first few modernist buildings that was built. So this was my second moment of awe in the RRI campus. And the third one is next. So this is what the library, this is what it looks like from inside the library. Strangely enough, the library windows have no grills. And that is the kind of spirit that RRI believed in and still believes in. And spirit of free thought, free expression. And that is something I also experienced. I mean, not one of my ideas were shot down. They were always discussed and debated, but they were never shot down. So I think this is quite symbolic of that. This is the path leading to the former photo lab. This place that you see here is the corridor that leads to the former photo lab, which is now the location of the RRI archival gallery. This is the site of the archival gallery. It used to be a photo lab before, and now it has been converted. It was meant to be repurposed for something that it was kind of meant for, to contain memories through photographs, archives, and so yeah, now it's kind of met its purpose. So the contents of the RRI archives are quite diverse. They contain photographs, most importantly, as you can see here, addresses and talks by Sir C.V. Raman, correspondence material, letters that he's written to various people, his family and early life, photographs with contemporaries, distinguished personalities, his visits abroad, his visits to various colleges and institutions in India. So it was a very diverse and a very interesting archive, because it was so mixed, you know. And I was quite interested in it, because I mean, life is like that, right? It's not so organized. Everything happens together, everything happens at the same time. So it was great for me to go through this archive. And when I say go through, I went through it for literally 2.5 months. I thought I can, you know, I'm quite good at organizing things. It wasn't too much of a job, but when I started looking through things, it took really long. So, but I wasn't starting from scratch, which was great, because the RRI library had already been digitizing all the archival material and organizing it through a digital repository, as you can see here. This is a screenshot of the RRI website. They had also been initiating several projects with regards to archiving and also creating material for archiving. This is the imprints collection which the RRI library created. It consists of the life and science of Raman's first 7 students at RRI. As you can see, if you're anyway related to the scientific world, they're all big names in the scientific world. So I've divided my presentation today into 3 phases. It didn't really happen like that. There were many things that happened together. As you will see in the presentation, it can get a bit confusing, but that's how it was, right? So in the morning, I'd work on design. Afternoon, I'd be talking to somebody. Evening, I'd be working on some other kind of research, reading a book. And that was the beauty of it, because both the design and research informed each other. And I think that was great. So I was given a beautiful office, nice office next to the librarian's cabin. So I could quickly go and talk to her every time I had a new idea or every time I had to discuss something. Very accessible, and I was given all the infrastructure that I needed, which was great. So I felt really welcome into the institute. And I eventually I started feeling at home. This is how we began organizing the archival material. And for me, because the archival material was so diverse, and because I didn't have a background in science history, so to say, these were my anchors, these books, especially Journey into Light, written by Dr. G. Venkatraman. It's about this thick, the book. It has everything about the life and science of Sir C.V. Raman. Although I couldn't understand the science bit that much, I think it's so well written that I could actually try and make some sense of it. So I kept going back to this throughout for building the archival gallery. Apart from books and the archives, we also started, Dr. Meera initiated another parallel project, which was about recording oral histories of former and current scientists at RRI, recording their journeys. And for me, it was really enlightening, because I was slowly beginning to understand what the institution stood for through their stories. These are all, I mean, undocumented stories, personal experiences, but it kind of gave me an understanding of the flavor, the tastes of the people that make this institution. And that was very important for me to design the archive. This was out of my own curiosity. The minute I saw the RRI library building, I really wanted to get my hands on its drawings, if ever they were available. So I made my way to the Estates and Buildings Department asking if these drawings were available, and they were, which are all now there in the library. But as I was looking for these drawings, another small idea came to my mind. This whole idea of mapping the campus. Because I was reading so much and it was all text, for me, I don't know, maybe because I'm trained as an architect, it is very difficult for me to visualize abstract concepts or text or events if I'm not able to spatialize it. So I really needed a map of the campus, then I can just pin up on my board and kind of look for a location every time I read about an event. Which is what made me think that we could probably have a nice campus map done as part of the exhibition. It would be a great introduction to RRI. In parallel, I started making models of the existing archival, the photo lab, which was the site of the archival gallery. And this model was a great tool to ground discussions, because there was just so much content to organize, so much of thinking to be done with regards to what needs to be exhibited and what shouldn't, that this kind of a physical model helped us ground these discussions and say, hey, yes, there is that much information, but there is just this much space. So how do we decide what needs to be exhibited? We also paid several visits to research labs at RRI just to understand how the scientists work, what are the kind of equipment that they use, how big is it. Of course, I didn't understand the science part of it, but I kind of got a feel of their daily routine and their and how they work in a sense. So if something had to be exhibited, what form would that be in? So as all these visits were happening, we also had several discussions with the director, Professor Ravi Subramanian, the scientific officer, Dr. Subramanian, and Dr. Meera, to try and develop a vision for the exhibition. What was the purpose of this exhibition? Who were our target audience? And what was it meant to do in the long run? So this is the kind of purpose that we developed. The idea was to showcase the life and science of Sir C.V. Raman from 1888 to 1970 throughout his life. Also to showcase the evolution of scientific research at RRI in a manner that is comprehensible by the general public. So which means that content creation for the post-1960 panels was extremely critical. And in fact, it went through many drafts. The third was to serve both as a gallery and a visitor center. So things like the campus map, an introductory panel, all of this added to the fact that it could now be used also as a visitor center, like the first point of a larger tour possibly. And I also interpreted two purposes from the discussion. One was to create a space for reflection, because I constantly had this thing in my mind that what extra value is a physical archival space adding when digital archives are available. And then I realized that it does create some sort of a space for collective reflection. You know, if a group of children or a group of scientists, visitors, they're going along looking at all the exhibits, they tend to have a conversation, right? And we also try to relate our lives with the life of whoever the exhibit is about. And these conversations are what are valuable, and the physical space allows for that. Also, the fact that the physical space is in the Raman Research Institute and the exhibits are also about RRI, that was great, because it contextualizes it geographically. Lastly, but one of the most important aspect was that it needed to tell an inspiring story. If it wasn't inspiring enough, then it didn't serve its purpose. So that was like, these were like some benchmarks that we set for ourselves to curate the content and to design the exhibition. The discussions continued. We discussed and discussed and discussed. I think if I look back, the one thing that I did the most at RRI was to talk. So we discussed with the coordinators of the research groups regarding the gallery. We also paid visits to archives of other research institutions. I think this is something that I really appreciate of Dr. Meera. She was always open to learn new things. And so she, in fact, arranged for these visits. We also visited other exhibitions that showcased science-related exhibits, science material, to understand how they were designed. So After all of this, we arrived at the present contents of the exhibition. So right now, there is an introduction to RRI, a panel introducing visitors to RRI, the RRI campus map, which I will show you later in the presentation. The most important thing is the timeline showing the life and science of Sir C.V. Raman from 1888 to 1970. A lot of our effort went into building this timeline. The scientific journey of RRI from 1970 onwards, we've had literally 35 to 40 scientists contributing panels to this, and they have been extremely cooperative because I kept going back to them with edits and drafts. Each panel has at least gone through 4 or 5 drafts. So they've very kindly given their time to contribute these panels. A panel showing Sir C.V. Raman's medal and vision for RRI. So I found this really beautifully handwritten message that Sir C.V. Raman had written as his vision for RRI. So we've displayed that as well. Story cards, this was my small input. So as I was reading the archival material, what caught my eye were the stories. I kind of made sense of history through the stories. So I thought that yes, the larger narrative was important because the larger milestones were important, but you also needed these small stories to kind of back it up and make it come alive. So that's what the story cards do. We have also displayed photocopies of handwritten documents of Sir C.V. Raman and compiled volumes of his research, which the Indian Academy of Sciences has compiled several volumes of his research. There are some possible future editions which we are working towards. One is a digital compilation of the current research. There is an instrument that Sir C.V. Raman used. It is still there in RRI. So we are trying to see if we can exhibit that as well. Compilation of newspaper articles. The archives has newspaper articles right from 1920 to 2000s, and it's amazing. Like you could just spend a month just reading the newspaper articles. And lastly, handouts and takeaways for visitors. Small things, but important. So the first phase lasted literally 2.5 to 3 months, just to understand what the institute was about. The second phase, I'm calling it exploration. It was about exploring design and organization of the content, creating content in certain cases, and also exploring the architectural design of the place. So this was kind of a conceptual design that I came with. This is a photograph of a Chettinad house. The idea was that the pillars all around and the semi-open space all around is what I saw as history. You know, like a legacy that kind of holds up the building. And there is a central space which is bright, ever changing with the seasons and the sunlight, colorful, contemporary. So that is how I imagine the space to be. Also because it's a small room, it's 20 feet by 25 feet with a 6 feet corridor, which we've kind of taken into the space. So it also needed space for groups of children to move around. Probably in the post-COVID world, it's going to be a bit different. So this is how I visualized it to be, that the center keeps changing. And now we've thought that in the center, we will have a digital display that is way more flexible. It can even be interactive. So we're working towards that. I really wanted to talk to everybody in RRI with regards to this project because it is kind of a shared asset and everybody needs to feel like they have had a say in it, so to say, and the fact that it is a science exhibit. So of course the scientists know better what is the kind of exhibit that would probably inspire younger scientists. So what would make sense really? So we did this small interactive session where we put up a poster in the canteen. We invited all RRI members and we had a great interactive session. We had scientists, we had students as well. We had people from the administration, a lot of people attending the session. So it was great. They gave us design and content inputs. and parallelly started exploring what the graphic can look like, what kind of framing is to be done, what kind of fonts are to be used, what kind of paneling can be done, and what is the most convenient way also to go about it. Fact is that because it is a permanent exhibit, it needed to be long lasting. So we had to take several decisions. By this time, also a committee of senior scientists was appointed by the director. So they were constantly in touch with us and they would help us take these decisions. And we'd have lots of discussions to take every single decision. So then the visualizations kind of evolved with a little more detail, and this is how I thought the timeline could be. However, there was one thing that was bothering me, that this could be a timeline of anything. How can the graphic kind of reflect the life and science of C.V. Raman? So that made me go back to the archival material a bit. I found a small postcard inviting people to a conference called Waves and Symmetry. And this was a conference that was held to celebrate 100 years, Sir C.V. Raman's 100th birthday in 1988. And that kind of, I just got a little bit of idea from that. And I said, okay, what if the timeline looked like a wave, and there are these spurts of these larger events, and there are smaller events that start getting added to it. So this was the first conceptual sketch that I made. These are the story cards. They were supposed to be like a calendar, very interactive. So the scientists were quite, they really wanted us to do a prototype before we finalized the design. And that's how they were throughout. I think it was a great learning experience for me, because every comma, every full stop, every word was kind of, it went through 3-4 drafts, and so did the design itself. So unless and until we were really satisfied with the prototype, we wouldn't go ahead to the next step. And that's what helped us create something of quality. The campus map exercise started progressing as well on the side, but it was a project in itself. I had two friends, young architects, Samaya and Raksha, who are right here, who I hope are also here in the webinar, who did a great job with surveying and mapping the campus, mapping not only the buildings but also the trees. So they've done a great job with the campus map. We also had a guest visit by Mr. Vijay Tiruvadi, who is the author. He's an environment enthusiast and the author of Trees of Bangalore. So he very graciously came in on one of the weekends early in the morning and walked with us throughout the campus, helped us identify trees. So this parallel project also was going on the side. Meanwhile, the content had been developed for the Raman's era, and we put up a mock exhibition in the same gallery space so that anybody and everybody from RRI can come and see what the exhibition is going to actually look like, and also give their comments. So we'd have a small post-it box where people could write their comments on post-its and stick them up on these panels. We did get several suggestions which were very good for us. So this is the members of the library staff who are helping us putting up this exhibition. As I said, every step there was a lot of support from RRI, which is why we could do this, because it's really not the job of 1 or 2 people. We did a second mock exhibition on National Science Day just to see what how children react to this content and kind of test our assumptions. But it was great. It was quite an optimistic thing. And in fact, there were several students taking notes and things like that. So it was very nice. One thing that came out from the second mock exhibition is that the newspaper articles are of immense value. So that is something that we will pursue in the future. We, in the meanwhile, we were coordinating with the former and current scientists at RRI to build the material for the post-1970 panels. The graphic was also very simple. It was designed such that they could fill up a panel on PowerPoint and send it back to us. It just had an image and a small a description and a small piece of text. The committee scrutinized kind of every panel and suggested edits, and we kept doing a lot of back and forth. In fact, the scientists, I would really like to thank them because they have given a lot of their time to building these panels. The third phase was about materializing the design and content, doing the interiors, the lighting, all of that. At this point, I'd like to thank Mr. Suresh, GB Suresh, who the RRI civil engineer, who really helped us out with the execution of the project. This was when the interiors were in progress. We also had a projector and a projector screen put up so that in future, if there are any documentary films, etc., there is provision for that to be shown as well. And then COVID happened. So, so we had to kind of stop halfway through, and I came back to Ahmedabad. But we had good enough documentation to kind of remotely also facilitate this. Dr. Meera and Dr. Subramanian, the scientific officer, were there throughout the day to ensure that the installation of the panels happens. And I had left key drawings so that they could supervise this installation. So the panels were finally installed. So this is what it looks like now, the view from the entrance. This was a corridor previously leading to the back door. The back door is still there. We've just added another door here and kind of incorporated the corridor within this. And this is what the entrance to the archival space looks like. The corridor has now been transformed into the space that displays the campus map and the introduction panel. That's what the campus map looks like. Yeah, that's what the campus map looks like. All of this are the buildings, and on the right are all the trees. So the gallery space, the photo lab, was transformed into this kind of a gallery space. The story cards are still not up, but they will be soon because they have been finalized. So yeah, I mean, after all the content comes up, I think it'll be quite a nice space. These are some samples of the content that have been put up. There are two types. One is the main narrative, and the other is the story card. So I'll just leave you to it for a minute so you can read it. So this narrative talks about some, it was very difficult for us to identify what to exhibit and what not to exhibit. But since we had these benchmarks of something that tells an inspiring story and something that creates a space for reflection and things like that. So those kind of very abstract kind of benchmarks that really helped us with creating the content. So now there is a second mock exhibition of the post-1970 panels, so that one is really able to visualize at what height the panels are going to be. Is it readable from a slight distance? Are the pictures looking nice? All of that. And they are in the process of getting finalized. So yeah, that was the whole process of what happened. And this Throwback Thursday has really kind of, I'd like to thank IFA for organizing it, because I had never put all these processes together in one place and really reflected upon them. So this is great for me. So when I look back at all these design and research processes that happened, there are three things that come to my mind. The first is this whole relationship between science and art, and about how science and art can come together to create something. So if I talk of reflection, I have to put up this photograph because this is the photograph of the Raman tree. It's a primavera tree that was planted in the lawns of RRI, in the place where Sir C.V. Raman's ashes are buried. So when he passed away, his near and dear ones, everybody agreed that he would not have liked a monument in his remembrance. So they all planted a tree, which was great. And you pass this every day when you enter the campus. So, which is why I've kind of put up this tree. This was also one of the few times that the tree was in full bloom. I have put this up because when I reflect about this whole combination of science and art coming together, there is one quotation also that I'd like to put here. It is by Sir C.V. Raman. I'm just going to call it out. So he said that, I think we will be readily conceded that the pursuit of science derives its motive power from what is essentially a creative urge. The painter, the sculptor, the architect, and the poet, each in their own way, derive inspiration from nature and seek to represent nature through their chosen medium, be it paint or marble or stone, or just well-chosen words strung together like pearls in a necklace. Science, in other words, is a fusion of man's aesthetic and intellectual functions devoted to the representation of nature. It is therefore the highest form of creative art. I think this was beautiful because it kind of frames this whole relationship between science and art, where Sir C.V. Raman is trying to say that science is art. And they are not two different layers that kind of come together and need to be stuck together with something. There is art inherently in science. And that is something I did discover. Like when I saw some of the photographs that came out of the research, photographs of molecules, I don't know, colorful waves, all of that, they were so beautiful. They were art in some sense. So I feel like there is a lot of potential to work with science institutions, and for artists to work with science institutions. It's a pleasure to work with scientists. There's a lot to learn, but they're also very strict. They're very, very particular about why we are saying something. If there is no evidence, if there is no justification for what we are saying, then that is inconsequential. That is something that happened throughout my journey at RRI, and I really appreciate that because it really pushed, I had to push my limits to kind of provide evidence and, communicate logically in all aspects, whether it's design or it's research. So that was great. And I think, again, there's a lot of potential for science and art to come together. The second reflection is on the idea of collaboration and co-creation. So from all the theory that I've read about participatory design processes and things like that, there's always this rhetoric of bringing people together. And probably there is stuff written on the role of the architect or the facilitator itself. But what I learned from this experience is that if I hadn't probably participated in the daily life of RRI, I wouldn't really have been able to connect to people there. I wouldn't have been able to reach out to them and communicate, and this wouldn't have become kind of a collaborative process. And thankfully, luckily, by RRI, by the library, and by the scientists. They were very happy to speak to me every time I bothered them. So that is great. And I mean, beyond a time, I kind of became part of the library. So there were instances when students would come and ask me about some books when I was sitting in the office, and I had to tell them that I don't know, sorry, I don't know library science, and I don't know, you'll have to wait for the librarian to come back. But I think it was a great effort to be part of all that, to be part of the birthday celebrations, to be part of the all the farewell celebrations at RRI, to be part of this, the National Science Day, where we set up a stall as RRI Library. And that's me, like in the same RRI volunteer t-shirt. Um, and this is us putting it up together when we met early in the morning. And I feel like that is the spirit of collaboration or co-creation, you know, that you have to kind of leave behind all those prejudices that you have, uh, kind of preconceived notions, and also allow yourself to kind of fit into a different environment, understand people. And all of this is a very slow process, but it's a very worthwhile one. And that's something I realized here. Possibly I was able to do it at an individual level because the scale was smaller. It was about working with 50, 60 people. Maybe the strategies will have to be different when the scale increases. I'm not sure about that. But I think this was a great learning for me as a person who would like to facilitate more such projects, and work collaboratively with people from different fields. So that's great. And the last one that I'm going to kind of leave all of you with is what can archival galleries look like in the post-COVID world? You know, so these are the this is on the National Science Day, school children from different schools huddling around the exhibits, trying to make sense of what is written, and connecting it to their own textbooks, getting excited about it, all of that. I mean, how can this I don't know how we can do this. It will have to be virtual, of course, but we will have to also, when we are designing physical spaces, we'll have to think about this. That if this physical space were to be represented virtually, what would that be like, and how would that happen? Is there space in this physical space that we've created for that possibility? um, I don't know. I'll leave it for all the interaction designers and the filmmakers and all the other creative people to kind of think about it, and also all the architects to think about it, because we don't reside in a purely physical world anymore. There is the virtual world is as much a part of our lives as the physical world. So that is something we need to think about. So yeah, that's it. I would like to thank everybody from the Raman Research Institute, all the external agencies and consultants, Suman Gopinath from IFA, and also Tata Trusts for giving me this opportunity. And special thanks to the Raman Research Institute for really welcoming me, welcoming new ideas, and discussing it out. I think the discussions were the most important things. And there was never a dull moment during those discussions. We might not have used all the material that we discussed, but it was the discussions that gave rise to the RRI Archival Gallery. So I think I'll leave you all at that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ramya, for that really interesting and comprehensive account of your time at RRI. I know you did a lot of things during that 7 months there. But one question for you before we open it up to the audience: what, according to you, was the highlight of your time at RRI?
So I feel like the rhythm of the institute was, I can't call it a highlight, but that was something that kind of stayed with me. the meticulousness and the rhythm of the place. The meticulousness of working, meticulousness when it comes to discussions, documentation, and also life in general. So how the institute functions throughout the day. So when you enter, there is a certain smell, there is a certain experience from the trees and everything. In the evening, there is a certain kind of light that comes in, and you are seeing people going about doing their work in the institute in a certain rhythm. And I feel like because over time, because I spent time there, I was able to kind of internalize that rhythm, and that is what really helped me take it forward, so to say. Yeah.
Thank you, Ramya. I now invite Arundhati to take questions from the audience.
Yeah, thanks, Suman. Fascinating presentation, Ramya. Thank you for that. A lot of comments on the fact that people really enjoyed your presentation. I have a couple of questions here, so I will begin with that. The first one is about, would you suggest any methodology to go about the interviews? Because certainly there seemed like so many stakeholders who came into the conversation with you, right?
Yes.
So maybe share a little bit about the methodology you used and what would you suggest?
Right. So, like I said, because the scale was smaller, I could approach everyone individually, and that had a lot of value. That added a lot of value. Because initially, I'll just share this experience that when we organized the interactive session, I had a lot many more plans for it. That I thought that the first time everybody's coming together, we'll have an interactive session, and then we'll do we'll do group work. Like I'll divide people into groups, and they will draw, and like I had all sorts of random things in my mind. But when the interaction started, I realized that it's too much. It's too much to expect so much from people, and the first time you can't possibly do that. And there are some conversations that cannot happen in groups. And I did realize that we tried to have a lot of group conversations, but when I only realized the value of these individual conversations when the content was created.
Yeah.
That's when I realized that this could not have happened in a group.
In a group.
But yes, so it really depends on the scale of the institute. It depends on the willingness of people also to interact with you.
Okay, then there's another question. This is about, have you imagined taking the digital version outside of RRI? Are you planning a digital version? And I guess the question is about that and whether it can go outside RRI.
We haven't thought about it yet. We are planning a digital exhibit in the archival space for the current research as a future edition. But we haven't yet thought about taking this. COVID was really sudden, like our imagination of this space is that there are going to be groups of students huddling together, seeing the whole thing. There's somebody going to be taking them around, and then they will watch a nice documentary film in that space, and they will leave the space. So now we have to completely reimagine what that could look like.
Yeah, I think the next question is connected, and it's all our anxieties about what happens to spaces. And as I should say, within IFA, this discussion about what happens to art galleries, what happens to museums, what happens to auditoriums, what happens to anything that you've known as physical space. There are jokes about how should we now get married online? I mean, what's going to happen to marriage halls? Already you're allowing only 20 people at a time.
Yeah.
So the next question is also connected, that you had thought of activities, events around this whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Now, will all that shift into a virtual world? How are you thinking about that?
I think it should be hybrid. I think there should be a possibility for both these things to happen. And virtually, you can't possibly conduct the same activities, because unless and until you share the same physical space with somebody else, you don't have that kind of a connect. So the activities that you design will have to be completely different, that are engaging on the screen. Also that now if you want to reach out to school children, they are really tired of the computer screen.
True.
So if not the computer screen, then the mobile, I think. I don't know, it'll have to be some sort of a screen. But there are other things like VR and AR that IFA has been exploring, which
Yeah.
I think have been really big hits from what I've heard. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and so going back to, the archive itself, what helped in structuring the place? I mean, I found it fascinating that you spoke about the Chettinad House, and that part I didn't know. I've read your reports, etc., but I somehow missed it.
Yeah.
It was fascinating that you saw this house and then connected it. So this question is really about what are the different things that helped you structuring the space.
Right. So initially it was really haphazard. I had imagined partitions and things like that. But I think it was really the fact that the research was constantly connected to the design. There was no research phase and then design phase. The two evolved together. And what information we have at hand and how much space do we have to display it versus what is the space going to look like and what is the kind of information that should be displayed with related to that. So I think that constant connect is what really helped. So I would, if I needed a break from research, I would start sketching and trying to design something, and then I'd get some idea and say, hey, maybe we should try and discuss this in the content part of it. What if we do this? So I think that is something that really helped.
Yeah, thanks. I think the next question is very interesting because, as you were talking about all the amazing scientists giving their ideas, the present and the past staff at RRI, I was thinking how these people themselves are little archives of the larger space, right? They carry so much of history,
Yes.
etc. But the question is about, and it came out very beautifully in your presentation. The question is about what other kind of guides help, like reference books. Are there other ways that have helped other than the people, of course, who gave you so much of material?
Right. So because this was going to be a permanent display, and because the gallery is also kind of representative of the institute, we had to really make sure that we get our facts right, which is why we heavily depended on documented books written by historians. So the oral history interviews gave us clues as to what is the kind of content that is inspiring, but we couldn't quote directly from the oral histories. The other tool that I've used are the story cards. And because they are stories, right?
Yeah.
So that's the best part of stories, that you don't need to really give that kind of an evidence. Their personal experiences, there's little snippets of people's lives. So that is what the story cards are for. And initially we were a little skeptical about it, how it will turn out. But after they've been finalized now, I think everybody's quite happy with it because they're very interesting.
Yeah. And I guess these story cards really make it alive, no? It comes alive. It adds that little zing to the whole thing.
Yeah, it's like movie trivia, like you have watched the movie, you really like the movie, but you really want to know what happened behind the scenes.
I know, trivia and goofs is what you go and read.
Yeah.
So there's another thing about the structuring, which is about was there a thought process that went into specific themes around the panels? Like you mentioned it, right? The different ways in which you divided it up. Was there a thought process on why those specific themes were chosen and how?
So with regards to the Raman era panels, it was about telling an inspiring story and making sure that if the book has mentioned that it is an important event, it ought to be presented, so to say. But the post 1970 panels, initially the imagination was that the timeline will continue all the way till 2050. But then when we had discussions with the scientists and the committee members, they were very clear about the fact that you can't represent scientific content like that. Like you can possibly represent the life and science of a personality on a timeline because things happened one after the other, you're representing events. but you cannot represent scientific research like that, because research projects go on for many years. There are several overlaps between themes. In fact, I made several master lists. I took the annual reports, I tried to extract something from it. The library staff also helped us extract these possible themes. But every time I went to discuss with a scientist, they just said, this is not how you represent science. It can't be done that way. It will have to be group wise, the 4 research groups that we had, because each group started at a different time and evolved very differently. So even now, when you go and take a look at the content, you will see a different way in which the groups have evolved.
Yeah.
So yeah, that I think it was more about discussing with the scientists and understanding from them as to how science is to be done.
Yeah. And there's a question from Facebook, for the Facebook Live saying, how do you plan to connect the archive with the Raman Museum? Is there any thought around that yet?
So the archival gallery is kind of an independent entity in itself, and it shows very different things from the Raman Museum. So the Raman Museum has personal collections of Sir C.V. Raman, and it is very beautiful, but the exhibits are very different.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And so we've ensured that in the archival gallery, we don't exhibit original archival material, because it's meant to be for a lot of people to come and, it meant to
a
be
larger
like
public thing.
More public space, a more public space in the institute itself. And so you need to give that freedom if it's that kind of a space, right? So, and the library library members have their own work. They can't possibly kind of supervise what every child is doing, every person is doing. And it's very natural for children to put their fingers and read things and do all of that. So so which is why it's a very different kind of space. As of now, there is no connection as such. They're 2 very different spaces.
So here I have 2 more questions, short ones. But before that, I'm taking the liberty to actually ask Suman a question. Suman, you know how it happens that whenever there's a scientific project or project connected to science in some way, we are taught to stereotype from the time we are a child that science is hard. Only very brainy people get science, Arts is more emotive and almost all of us respond to the arts. But unless you're super smart, genius-like, you cannot. And this is an aura built around science and scientific study. And I've noticed every time there is a science project that comes to IFA, all of us get slightly nervous. Will we understand as program officers, and we get daunted. So I actually wanted to ask you, how was the experience for you? Because you've handled in this project quite a few science and AR and technology and all of that. How was handling this project together with Ramya? I mean, she's an architect and she comes from a sort of non-science background, but you also, you're a curator. How was getting into the science world for you?
Arundhati, as you know, I mean, in our archival and museum fellowship program, we have just worked with so many different kinds of archives and museums. Yeah. And it is really difficult to be a specialist or even to know about all these, the matter in these different kinds of archives and museums. Right. I mean, for instance, we work with the music archive, both in Delhi and in Ahmedabad. Yeah. And I don't really know the technicalities of music. Yeah. So I have to ask people in the IFA team to help me. Yeah. But I think it's also in a way very interesting for me as as a person who works with these different kinds of institutes, because it's a learning experience for me. Yeah. And I must say that, working with Ramya and with Dr. Meera and everybody, you get a sense of things. And that's the really interesting bit for me, because working on this program, I've just learned about so many different things that I had no clue about earlier. True, so it's been a wonderful learning experience for me, because I mean, obviously nobody can be a specialist and know everything about everything else. So for me, this is a really interesting part of my job, just learning new things almost every day,
I know.
And it was a real pleasure working with Ramya and Dr. Meera, because like she said, the main aim was to make things accessible here. So putting things in such a way so that even the layman could understand what was being displayed here.
And especially with science being so presented always as this daunting thing, it's hard to like then simplify it for people to understand. So the next question is about, did your project involve any part of also looking at how this material might be best accessed by other historians, researchers, storytellers? Did it involve that at all? No.
No.
Okay. So this was only about creating this archival gallery, right?
Yes. So the archives are yet to be, kind of worked upon and things like that.
So that will continue as a but a lot of digitalization has happened, like we see on their website.
Yes.
So there's another question about, apart from the members from RRI, did you speak to anybody outside, which could be your other mentors, teachers, friends, family? Like, as in, I'm guessing this is about whether they know about the institute. And so did you talk to anybody outside?
Not really. I mean, I kept discussing the project with friends and family, but not really. I think it was more about more about people who are associated with RRI in whatever.
So this is an interesting question. Did you think of having a model or a live demonstration of the Raman effect to demonstrate the scattering of light? Did you imagine that as part of your, I guess, the permanent exhibition?
So yeah, I mean, the central space, that's what it was for actually. You know, that there was this idea that probably every 6 months there is a new kind of a live demonstration that is put there and things like that. But it is actually a lot of work. There is a lot of work that goes into putting up a live demonstration of something that is really complex. So then we decided to do it digitally.
Right. So you will have a digital, there is a digital cube there.
Yes. There is also, I mean, we are also planning to design some kind of a modular furniture that can be repurposed in different ways in case there are people who are willing to make these kind of models.
Right.
These models have to come from the scientists, and it takes a lot of their time to do this apart from the research that they're already doing. And I know they have very hectic schedules. So, and they do this anyway. They actually do this on the National Science Day. Like we had a library stall, every research group has their own stall.
And a lot of young people come on that day, right?
Yes, a lot.
Okay, I think that is I don't see any other question here. Okay, there's one last one which has just come up. In such an initiative and project funding pay constraint, I guess the question is whether funding is a constraint in projects like this one.
I mean, that is really dependent on the institute, I would say. In my case, that was not really that much of a constraint, because as long as the committee and Meera ma'am and other members felt that this is important for the institute, we went ahead with it. Because this was something that is to last a long term, and they did not want to compromise on quality, whether it comes to materials or lighting or whatever it is. We tried to get in what was best. But of course, it wasn't overdone. In fact, that was one of the fears that some of the scientists had initially, you know, that there is this external architect person who will come and do glamorous stuff and kind of create a very glamorous kind of a space. But then I realized when I spoke to them that that is not how they are. They are looking for substance, simplicity, clarity. And if that is not reflected in the design, then they will not like it, you know. And if the members who kind of share that space don't like it, then it really doesn't make sense.
Ramya, here and as an arts funding organization, I would like to say it's a very important question. And the answer that you gave is very illuminative of the fact that often it doesn't help if you have a lot of money coming in from the outside. So even if there is a large grant, as the main thing is about the institution that you're working with. So the museum or the gallery or the archive that you're working with. no matter what part of or which discipline they are from, science, art, archaeology, they could be sociology museums, they have to be invested in it. They need to feel as a collective that they want it.
Yes.
And budget of course is important everywhere, but really it's the last thing, because you can pour in all the money you want and not really have people care about what they're doing. But the fact, it was so amazing to see that room full of scientists, I can imagine discussing how they want this ownership, this collective pride.
Yes.
Is what makes it happen. Because if that is there, any little money can make something, and you can have a large fund, but without this collective sort of ownership, and you will get something which is very uninspired, like you're saying, a very glamorous facade kind of thing, but the soul will be missing.
Yes.
So I think that's also something we have learned. Suman and I have learned through this project. It doesn't matter whether the institution is big or they have a lot of money or resources. What matters is what their dream is as well.
Yeah, and also how welcoming they are of an outsider coming and doing
exactly. And how, it's so amazing that none of them felt threatened, because there are places where either people feel, why is this person coming and telling me what to do? Or will they come and change everything, change the way we do things? Or here it was so welcoming that you got to work with all of them together.
Yes. That was great.
Okay, so we don't have any more questions. So I guess we could end this here. I would like to thank everyone. Ramya, thank you so much for doing this presentation for us and for really helping us understand what this entire project was. Even for some of us within IFA, other than your program officer, it is these explanations that take us through, and it makes the work that we otherwise do valuable to us. You are the best ambassador of our work. So thank you for taking this time. Thanks to all the audience members for these interesting questions, for so much affection and love that you're showing on chat. Ramya, you should certainly see this. There's so much appreciation from your work.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for that. I'd like to thank the Tata Trust again and for supporting it. And thank you, Suman, for holding this entire project together with your other colleagues at IFA. Before we end, I would like to just point out that watch this space, because in 2 weeks' time, on October 22nd, we're going to come back with sharing another project. And the next one is also about Bangalore. And I think because, we are all locked up and can't really go out and mix, we want to share as much as possible about Bangalore. This will be around our project called Project 560, which is an initiative to encourage artists and citizens, scholars, but also everyday community members and neighborhoods within the city to look at their own city and create projects. The one that we are coming up with on October 22nd is from the neighborhood of Richardstown, and where Anahita Pinto, who's the grantee, is going to share this, worked with the children of the neighborhood, which consists of the residents' children, the children who go to Clarence School there, and the kids of the Parakarmikas who work there, how they got together with artists and a design studio to create what they understand as the environment of Richardstown. And they built a beautiful mural on one of the walls. So Anahita will share this. I'm requesting everybody who is here, please come for that and watch us on Facebook, on Insta, on YouTube. We'll be there. If you want some friend of yours who's missed it today, don't worry. The recording of this will very soon go up online, and you can invite them to come and see that as well. So thank you once again, and hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.